And Deborah?
No.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. How is everybody?
Hanging in there, doing well.
Good. Excuse me. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a roll here. So Todd is here, and Deborah's here, and Christy.
Yep.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Okay. And May is here, and Lorraine is here, and Nancy Turner is here. Margaret is here. Wait.
I'm here.
Where are you, Margaret? Oh, I see you. Okay. Nancy Eichstad is here. Natalie's here. Libby.
Here.
Oh, thanks, Libby. Beverly is here. Lanny's here. And Leslie is here. So we have everybody here. Fabulous. So we have a couple of minutes that hopefully you had a chance to take a look at. One was June 3rd and the other was June 17th that we need to approve. Has everybody had a chance? Can you give me a thumbs up if you've had a chance to look at them? So Margaret, did you get a chance to see them? And Deborah? Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes, or did anyone see any changes or corrections that we need to do? Okay, so Nancy made a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Thank you, Beverly. Okay, so the June 3rd and June 17th meeting have been approved. So today is going to be kind of a fun meeting. We're going to be able to look at an online open house that Allison and the team have been working on. And we're going to be able to give feedback on that online, whatever you call it. What's it called, Allison?
We can call it an online open house.
Online open house. Okay. Yeah. And then the second part of the meeting is to give suggestions as to how we think it would be best to get that information out and disseminated to the public. So that's our task for today. So Allison, let's go ahead and get started.
Great. We are going to be embarking on another round of community engagement. And as we talked about last time, the intention of this is really to help you all as a task force. You know, we had a pretty strong message last time when we talked about the different design alternatives that a lot of folks really liked option 3 and the corner entry. And you will be making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners towards the end of the summer. We're going to be coming back in August to review input from the community, and then around September, right, Catherine? I'm looking to Catherine. She's nodding. In September, you'll be making a recommendation to the board on your preferred alternative. And then Jennifer and her team will go and do their magic to refine it based on your feedback and any other pieces that need to kind of make the whole puzzle fit together. We talked about some of those initial considerations and thoughts that you had last time, things like what the foundation shop looks like, some of the function of the workspace, and then it'll move quickly into the next phase, into some of the design pieces. So the purpose of reaching out to the community in this phase is really to see if there's anything missing in your discussions and to enrich the conversations that you have so that you feel that you have all the information you need to make a recommendation and to vote on your preferred alternative, and make sure that any considerations, thoughts, additional ideas that the design team should keep in mind in that refinement piece, go forward. So what we've designed, because we are not able to have an in-person open house, and we have sort of a challenging task ahead of us. We need to educate the public about the different design alternatives that were developed, share how they're different, and then ask them some questions that'll give us some pretty specific feedback on what they like about certain designs and how they are evaluating them based on the criteria that you developed. So what we've come up with is an online open house, and it sort of mirrors the experience of an in-person open house where you'd have different stations. You could give input at each of those stations and then kind of share your overall evaluation. So I'm going to share that with you and share my screen shortly and kind of walk you through those stations. There's still a couple edits that we need to make. So the link will not be shared with you tonight. So it'll probably be shared with you by the end of the week. So we can make sure we've got everything tidied up and all the correct pieces in there, no spelling errors, stuff like that. But this will give you a sense of what we're looking at. So kind of want to make sure that we're going in the right direction and then get your thoughts on different groups that you're a part of, different places you think that this could be shared to, both online or just sharing it with your friends and neighbors, and start to generate a list that will supplement the outreach that we're doing with some of the other groups that we've been in contact with since the first round of outreach. So, sound good? I'm going to share my screen and give you a sneak peek at what's to come. Okay. Oops. So can everybody see, oops, excuse me. Sorry. I have to organize my, and if you have a question, I won't be able to see you, but feel free to pop it into the chat or stop me. I'm going to plan to just run through all of this and then stop at the end, check in with you all, and then we can move on to the next piece. But if you do have a question urgently, pop it into the chat so I can see it, because I can only see a couple of you right now. So we're looking at this is the landing page that folks will come to. They'll get a link. The link will look like this, but we've been working with Amber to find different ways to make it easy for people to log into this. So whether it's a shortened link or one of those QR codes that people can scan from their phone if it's on a postcard, but they'll get a link and this is where it will take them. It'll take them to this page that is really letting them know what we're doing, how long they have to do it, and the different stations, much like if we're at an in-person open house or sort of public meeting we might have. So this is letting us know that also that there's another survey, but for the Oak Lodge Library at the Concord School property. And if folks also want to take that survey, let's say they live in unincorporated Clackamas County and they might use both facilities, they can also take that survey. But this one is really focused on Gladstone, and this is kind of the only time it really mentions the Concord stuff. So when they get into background, this shares some of the videos from the past, and it lets them know what the project is. And a lot of this is already on the website, but it sort of shares, Gladstone needs a new library. Here's where the library is going to be. There's a little map so they can zoom out, and clarifies that it's going to be at the previous City Hall site. I know that there was some confusion circulating online, so we wanted to make sure that that was something clearly articulated. And then there's the schedule, which I think some of you have seen, or we've seen different versions of it, letting us know that we're here and looking at the design alternatives analysis and where we're going next. So folks have an opportunity to read through some of this background. And then in the next page, it's telling them really what we heard from them in the last round of feedback. So we have the video from the design charrettes, design workshop. Let's not use the word charrette, design workshop that was held, which is a great video if you haven't seen it. And some of the key themes in our last round of outreach that we heard. So we heard things from the survey that people took in the first round that, it's really important to have space for a bunch of different activities, that meeting areas are really, really important, that the bookshop area is also really important for Gladstone, and that folks really wanted it to feel children and teen friendly. This link takes them to the document that has all the summary of all the outreach that was done in the previous round, which we reviewed what seems like a very long time ago now, I think in January, when we reviewed that together. And then this has a little bit about the task force. So this links them to the website that has more information about the task force itself, and the roster, and the minutes, and the agendas. And then this is the community values that you developed as a group that became the criteria. So you have a little bit of information. Again, we don't want to overwhelm folks with too much stuff, but we want to make sure that they have some of the context that they can read through. And then we really get to the important piece. So this is where we get into reviewing the different designs. So what we've done is we've done these different tabs, and all of these are, if you remember, the criteria that you came up with. A couple of them we know are just, and you even reflected on this when you did that survey where you had to do that evaluation, where a lot of you said, you know, this really doesn't apply right now. So we talked with the design team and based on your feedback and decided that some of these are really important criteria, but they're more important for some of your discussions, not really for the public to weigh in on, because they don't make a ton of difference between the schemes right now. And I think you helped affirm that when you took that survey to let us know that, you know, things like sustainable design, that's really important. And really all schemes have opportunities for sustainable design. And it'll probably be something that's developed more further as the team gets closer to construction in that schematic design phase. So we wanted to let people know about that. Okay, these pictures are very small, but if they click on them, they get larger and they can see a bit more of that detail of, this can also go away if they want, of the designs. This is also sort of set up so that it'll look a little different, but it'll still be readable and in a similar format on a phone. So I think on a phone, these things are all, they're vertical instead of horizontal, but it's all kind of made to also work on a phone. So as folks click through, we'll go to this first criteria, creates a shared sense of community identity. We've talked about this a lot. And then with what Jennifer and Jim and their team have done these graphics that really point their eye to the pieces and gives a little bit of detail about what parts of this criteria are really important to understanding, you know, what are we talking about when we talk about community identity? We're really talking about the meeting rooms, the after hours access to the meeting rooms, the different study rooms that you have, the things like the plaza and which way does it face according to the street, and sort of all the things that Jim, Ray, and Kurt went through and Jennifer went through when they did that workshop with you, sharing all these designs and walking through all of this. Nancy, thank you for the edits. Those are great. And I will be taking note of those. So if you see any other pieces like that, thank you. Let me know. And then folks can click on this and take a little bit of a closer view. And then below, we ask them, okay, so this Portland Avenue entry, this is the criteria. Which of the following do you think is the most important? So we'd ask people to say, okay, I really like the meeting room in this one, and I like the plaza that faces Portland Avenue, for example. And then, we asked them to do a similar thing that you did, is rate them overall. So they could say, I think this one kind of meets the criteria. For this one, someone might say, I like the larger study room, kind of meets. And here they could say, you know, the way that the meeting room opens up to the children area, the plaza, the study rooms, I really like that. And I think it fully meets it. And they could say something like, this is great. For example, I'm kind of rushing through things, but just so you can see what folks are going to be asked to do. So yes, it is a little bit of back and forth, but this is one of the ways we thought that people could learn a little bit about different parts of the library as they relate to the criteria, and then tell us really specifically what it is that they like and do an overall evaluation. So we'll ask folks to do that for each of the criteria. And again, you'll kind of see that there's these narrative pieces that spell out the different parts of the library. There's the accompanying graphics that really point your eye to, like, here's the service desk, here's the teen area, you know, what are we talking about in these, to help direct folks using the same floor plans, and then asking them really similar questions. So folks will go through that, and then at the very end, they're gonna have answered all these questions, and they'll get to a matrix that, much like you did, it'll show them kind of what all their answers are. So when this is all filled out, they could see, you know, a whole bunch of yellows here, some yellows and reds here, maybe mostly greens and one yellow here. So that, like, that was one thing that you had expressed to us last time, is it's really helpful to be able to see overall how you rated things. And if somebody's looking at this and they decide, you know, I changed my mind, they can always go back and change their answers. But this helps them see overall how they rated things. And then it asks them the question, okay, based on this, put these in order. You know, which one do you think is number one? Okay, I think corner entry is number one. Which one do I think is number two? I think it's Dartmouth entry, and then it's Portland entry. And they can move these around, but really it's so that you as a task force, when we give you information on this, you don't just get, I only like this one, but you get a little bit more information that tells you how the community is ranking those three. So if, let's say number two, let's say the Dartmouth entry ends up being the top pick from the community, you can know, okay, well, is that a really close comparison? You know, really close between the Dartmouth entry and the corner entry, or was it Dartmouth, Portland, and corner? And that'll help hopefully inform your discussions a little bit more to know why. We can go back into that data of, okay, well, why? What did they rank it really high on? Where did it score well? And take that into your discussions. One thing that the Concord Task Force talked about was they had kind of a similar outcome to you, with that they all really felt strongly about one option and said, you know, we really want the community to know, we don't want to stack the deck, but we want the community to know that we've thought really long and hard about these things. And we want the community to know which was our preferred alternative, or not our voted preferred alternative, but which got the preliminary endorsement, we're calling it. So what we did here is we added a little asterisk, and we just wanted to indicate kind of gently, hey, the task force really liked this one. Here's why. And it gives some of the notes from what you told us last time that you really liked about option 3. So hopefully it's a way to gently show the community a little bit of insight into your discussions that you've had, but not make them feel like they have to choose the same thing that you chose if they don't feel similarly. But it brings a little bit of your conversation into this experience. So we don't have to include that, but it was something that, you know, Concord had asked for. It seemed like it might make sense for this group as well, but you can let us know if you like that or you don't like that. We can always take that out if it's not something that you think is helpful or that you'd like to include. So folks they'll evaluate on each of these criteria. They'll give a final evaluation and let us know the ranking of, you know, which one do they think is the top, which one is the bottom. And Lisa, I see that you have you changed the questions wording, so thank you for that feedback as well. And then they just go to some next steps. So they learn how they can stay involved. They have an option to share. So this will go ahead and take them directly to Twitter. If they wanted to share it on Twitter, I don't have Twitter set up, so it's not going to automatically populate it, but it'll give you something that's really easy to click on and share to your social media, or to, you know, whoever social media is taking this. And then if folks do want to submit additional feedback, they can do that by email. And then underneath, we have some demographic questions. These are all optional, aside from a first name and a zip code. And that's just so we know that, or we can track a little bit, you know, if somebody's from, you know, one, we can track where they are, but sometimes we'll get answers that are suspiciously similar and it looks like the same person maybe did it 75 times, and we can go back and look at IP addresses and kind of figure out who's who, and the name just helps us identify if somebody's been, people can take it multiple times, but we encourage them to just take it once so that they don't stack the decks in favor of one thing. But the only thing that's required is a first name and a zip code. So hopefully it's not too intrusive. And then we have some optional demographic questions, much like we had on the first survey, that people can ask to let us know a little bit more information. And then they'll finish and they'll submit their answers. They can review their responses, they can see everything that they said, and then they can hit submit. So it is a little long, but it's also pretty thorough in that it tries to go through all the information that you heard. And for folks who really care and who really do want to learn more about this process, about these designs, and deep dive into this, it gives them an opportunity to do that, to explore, to learn, and to share their feedback. Folks can, and they often do, skip around. They don't have to answer every single question. And oftentimes when we put these together, we will see that somebody might not care about something and they'll just skip that question. That's okay. Their answers will still count and still can be put in. It'll just be something that we'll analyze at the very end with our data. So I am going to stop sharing my screen now. And I can always go back and we can look at some more things and, oops, and review if you'd like to. But I do want to get some initial thoughts from folks, and also know that your edits are much appreciated, and we want to be sure that you get a link to review more thoroughly once we've had a chance to kind of tighten up a few of the minor errors that we've noticed. So I see a hand from Jennifer, and I see a hand from Christy. So I'm going to go Jennifer first, and then
I have a chat thing, but I seem to have gone off the grid here.
you're off the grid, Deborah. Okay, so we'll get
Did you get my chat comment?
I did not.
Okay, well, my comment was that under where do you live?
Mm-hmm.
You have Milwaukee, which nobody from here should be putting Milwaukee anyway, but I think more appropriately for a lot of the service area, if you just said North Clackamas, it makes more sense to people in the unincorporated area.
Rather than unincorporated. Thank you, Deborah.
Well, I think North Clackamas is clearer to people.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, Jennifer,
I'm going to try and get in.
you had your hand.
I did. I just wanted to, one point you made in the very beginning that I think is really important, and we did get some feedback from people that people have had a hard time finding the site on the internet. I know that we've talked about this in some of our previous meetings, and you did touch on it, but just to reiterate that the ability to get this information will be a link on the landing page of the whole community project site, correct? So that when people go to that first place, they don't have to go through a link to a link to a link to get to this information. It'll all be right there to get into it, correct?
Yes, Amber's nodding, and I think actually maybe we can pause on that for a second, and
Okay.
once we get some kind of initial questions, I'll pass it over to Amber to tell us a little bit more.
Perfect.
That's a great point. So why don't we hear from Christy, and then we'll take some other questions, comments, thoughts, ideas. Leslie, I see you too. Thank you.
Well, I do like the this is what the task force kind of recommends.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's helpful. One of the things that I found of value when we first went initially through all the designs, because I'm a bottom line kind of person, is when I looked at all three designs, you guys had put on option 3, which we all live anyway, that it actually didn't have any negative aspects to it. It was all, this meets every box pretty much. And I don't know if if we want to, or if there's a way to convey that to people. I don't know that we want to necessarily get prices out there, but I mean, that's just my opinion, because I liked the design, but that also helped reinforce my decision.
Hmm. So I hear 2 points. One is kind of the pros cons list and how that's articulated in this. And then you also made a point about cost that I do want to touch on. So I'm actually going to share my screen again, and then we'll continue with some additional questions, because there's been an update to the cost that I think is important for folks to know, because we are going to be sharing cost in the online open house. So, but these numbers look slightly different. We just want to make sure that you're clear on this and clear on why. So actually, Jennifer, could you say a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so the numbers that we looked at previously, as we described, were the direct construction cost numbers, which means just, to build the building, but it didn't include the costs that Catherine spoke to, which were all kinds of fees and permits and, FF&E or furniture, all those kind of things. That was an additional, that's usually about 30% more of the direct construction cost. So the numbers that are reflected here, and they're very high level, they represent the total project cost. So we thought that it would be clearer for people to not just understand a portion of the cost, but to understand the total cost, because that's really what in much of the public's mind, that's what they're looking at. The cost of this project is this, and it is the total cost. So those numbers do not match what you had earlier, because what you saw earlier was just that direct construction portion. Catherine, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that covers it. One of the things is that whenever we were gathering questions from everybody, Concord asked a lot more questions about cost. So we went into a lot more depth about direct construction costs and indirect construction costs, also sometimes called soft costs that Jennifer was just describing. So we didn't, and so people were very interested in the total project cost, which makes a lot of sense because that ultimately is what it's really going to cost. So we felt like we wanted to do apples to apples when we were out there talking to the public about the cost of the project. So that's why we've gone back on the Gladstone and made them similar in the way that's formulated to the Concord site. So we didn't spend as much time on cost with you all because the costs were so similar, but if you have questions, be happy to answer them.
And I do see Lisa's comments on changing that wordage from cost to total cost. So thank you, I've got that down in my notes. You're still small on my screen, so I can't see a lot of you if you have questions, but I do want to speak to Christy's kind of second point. One thing we wanted to do, and I think this kind of illustrates it well, is not necessarily frame things in terms of pros and cons, but to give kind of an unbiased way of presenting this information to the public, or with a little less value or judgment associated with it. Which is challenging because I think that there are some things that some of these designs perform really, really well on, and some things that they kind of lack in. So we tried to do things like, for example, this one, it says, that the book drop serves workroom, but it's further from the public entry. The book drop is outside on this one, and therefore it may require a second book drop, and it's a little less efficient. So we tried to frame it kind of as facts rather than a pros and cons list. And here, you can see the book drop serves both entry and library workroom. And just so that folks can kind of make their own judgments based on what the reality of these different designs are. But I'm also hearing you say, Christy, that you found those pros and cons really helpful. So I think that's something for us, for us to consider as well.
So now with the inflated numbers to reflect a more true cost, and they are so much higher than initially when we had the budget to begin with, is this going to create a lot of where is this money coming from questions? Because I've gotten a few already.
The 30% was never a secret.
No,
us.
understood, but
yeah,
I mean,
so
I'm just talking.
It's not a surprise, and we have accounted for that when we have been looking at all of the numbers together.
But Christy, you're talking about the original assumption at $300 a square foot or whatever the agreement was, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think I've been sharing some of this stuff with some of my neighbors, and they're like, okay, this is more than was originally talked about. Where's all this extra money coming from? And I'm just wondering if having that dollar value out there, I mean, we want full disclosure, of course, but is that going to create, I don't want to say controversy, but concern, maybe?
Well, Laura's here, so I might have her speak to it as well. But we have put all the numbers together. As you remember, the county, I'm trying to think, county commissioner, we had a couple of commissioners and also the county administrator come and say very specifically that they were going to build 2 libraries. And at that time, it was clear that the $300 a square foot was not going to was not appropriate anymore. And so we've done a fair amount of discussion about that with, certainly with Laura and the leadership team. And then Laura has also talked about that with the county administrators. So we feel like we're still in really good shape. Laura, do you want to respond?
Well, I was thinking as far as the survey that you could potentially put a statement in the survey about the fact that Clackamas County is going to be building 2 libraries, that we have a settlement agreement. And I mean, I could think about the wording. I think when's this supposed to go live? Like quick?
Monday.
Monday. Okay, so I'd have the weekend, but we could put a statement in there. But again, we are fully committed. The county administrator, the Board of County Commissioners is aware that it will cost more than $300 per square foot, and we have a plan in place to issue revenue bonds to pay for it. So I'm not worried about it. I don't think our commissioners are worried about it. I don't think our county administrator is worried about it. And if it would be helpful to add a statement, we could do that.
I think, as Lisa, kind of mentioned in the chat, I think the transparency would be nice, and just that little caveat from you representing the county, I think would be helpful to put that transparency out there and put people's minds at ease, going, oh, now my taxes are going up and blah, blah, blah. Because, I mean, right now with people not working and who knows where our new normal is going to be, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. How about
Just to be clear, the revenue bond is not will be issued by the county, and it's not something that needs to go to the public for a vote, just so you know.
Correct.
Okay, so I think we'll go next to Leslie, and then I see
Nancy
Nancy.
Eichstead has her hand up.
Yeah, I think I saw Leslie a couple minutes ago, so I'll get Nancy, and then Natalie. Did you have your hand up as well?
Yes, I was going to make a statement.
Okay, great. So I'll go to Leslie, then Nancy, then Natalie.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I would like to emphasize what Christy said about making our opinion visible.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have it emphasized more than it would just be nice. We have been working on this, and I would think that people might like to understand our opinion and the knowledge that we have about why this number 3 is the best alternative. So rather than just saying, if you'd like to see why, I would like that check to be in red, and on the bottom to say, see why the task force likes this the best, or some such thing that will motivate people to want to see our opinion, because I think our opinion is important. We are a task force, and this is what we have been tasked to do. We still want to have more opinion input by the community, but I think that we should be influencers here, and maybe not quite as gently as Allison indicates the survey is. I think that we should be proud of our recommendation, and that we should try to convince our friends and neighbors that, hey, this is definitely a better alternative.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. No, I'm serious. I appreciate that. And I want to see what some other folks are saying too. I got a thumbs up from Christy. So less gentle. And that's also a thumbs up from Libby and a couple other folks. Thank you. How about over to Nancy and then Natalie?
Well, I just, I want to be clear about this. This is back to the cost thing. Isn't there, and maybe Laura, you can answer this, isn't there a certain amount of money that's already been collected to help pay for the library? And people are going to ask us, who's paying for this and how's that working? I would just like to have a little more detail about that.
So we do have some reserves, and I don't have the exact dollar amount with me right now, but we could put that in there. We have some reserves. We have the $200,000 that will come from the city of Gladstone every year that would go towards that. We have a portion of the library district distribution that both Oak Lodge and Gladstone get every year. A portion of that will go towards debt service. And then again, the county will issue a revenue bond to pay for the remainder. So those are the main sources.
Thank you.
And we can detail that out. And I think it was done previously in a Q&A that we have. I think Amber
Sure.
probably knows where it is, and we could pull that up and edit it.
We did a nice slide for Concord because they had asked the question. So we can put that together.
It does come up. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. So Natalie, and then I see a hand from Todd.
I was going to touch on the cost as well. I remember, and I don't remember if it was in December, there was a meeting at the old Gladstone City Hall in the conference room there where I believe the administrator, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, got up and addressed the issue and said that Clackamas County was going to make up the difference, along with Board Commissioner Humberson that was verifying and saying that as well, about the difference from what the cost is and that they were still moving forward. I do remember that precisely.
That's accurate.
Lanny's nodding her head. You remember that too, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be something to consider when you're being clear and transparent about the cost and the price that is mentioned, in the sense of that they, in good faith, they are going to make up the difference because the time is being drawn out for building and the costs are going to go up. So that people aren't fearing it's going to fall back on the citizens to pay in their property taxes for the extra costs.
Thank you. I see nodding heads from Laura and Catherine. Mitzi, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if you're talking to people out in the public, I think the very first thing you should say is there will be no additional monies from any kind of a bond measure from the Gladstone citizens that will be required to complete this project. I think that's the biggest misconception that gets out into the public, and it's really important that they know that they don't have to vote again, that we have the funds and we're ready to go, and nothing more will be required from the citizens of Gladstone other than the ongoing library district revenue and the $200,000 from the city.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to back up Mitzi's point of view.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
And see, I'm kind of incredulous that the library board or foundation doesn't understand this. That's all.
Okay. Lorene, did you have I saw your hand. Yeah, go right ahead.
You hear me?
Yeah.
So first thing, I just want to say thank you for all the hard work that went into this, because it's pretty amazing. And also that we're right on target on staying on track on the timeline. I think that that's important to give you guys a little pat on the back, and all of us, that we're sticking to the timeline and moving forward. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorene. Yeah, Beverly, go ahead.
Well, whenever I've talked to people, because you get a lot of questions because they know you're on the foundation or have been on the library board. And I've always just very clearly said the county is going to build the library. And if it runs over, they're going to pay for the overage. And we shouldn't be having to put out any other message than that, really.
I agree.
But you also raise a point, and this might be, we can continue to get thoughts and feedback from folks, but a kind of a good segue into the other piece that we wanted to chat with you about this evening is really your role as community ambassadors in this project. You know, you are around this table for a reason, and for a lot of you, it is the involvement that you have in, you know, making this library come to life, which we know has been a very long process, and a lot of you have, I don't want to say fought, but really advocated, maybe fought at certain points long and hard to get this library to come to life. And we are facing certainly some challenges with social distancing, with COVID, to be able to get the word out. But we also know that we have a room full of advocates for for this project. One of the things I think we're noticing is that it's really hard to explain everything to the public when we're asking them questions on a survey. You know, it's always going to be a limited instrument, but we hope that you'll be able to share some of those additional points and kind of talk through with people if you're hearing some of this misinformation, to be able to clear it up. And certainly that if folks do need to talk to, you know, Catherine or folks, you know, somebody on behalf of the county government, that you know where to direct people. But one of the things we are really hoping to do in this round of outreach is get this to as many people in Gladstone as possible. You know, we did have a higher proportion of folks coming from the Oak Grove Jennings Lodge area in the last round of outreach. You know, it's kind of it's a bigger project. It got a lot of, or bigger kind of area, but we do want to make sure that Gladstone has a lot of really rich input. We not to say that we got bad turnout from Gladstone, but it's just, you know, we want to make sure that we're meeting or exceeding the amount of people that we got involved in the first round of outreach and get them excited, and also with some factual information about what this library could look like and where we are in the process. So I was hoping that we could run through, and maybe if folks can share, you know, any groups that they're a part of, kind of like we did in the first round of outreach, where you're sharing, you know, where you could spread the word to people, or if there's a group that you are a part of that you'd be able to kind of share this link with safely, whatever that looks like for you, and help us get the word out. And we can also talk a little bit more about what that outreach specifically looks like, but so that we can, as best we can, set you up for success to be ambassadors for this project and getting people excited and sharing their viewpoints on which alternative they like. Todd, you have a hand. Go right ahead.
Well, I want to talk about the inline.
Sorry, can you clarify that?
You talk about an online survey. How about an inline results?
I'm not sure what that means.
Well, remember the walking path idea? Just 2 or 3 stations in a row.
Oh, and having people physically move through some things?
Yep. Well, no, they'll already be moving. We'd just be at different locations.
Oh, yes. Was this when we were talking about you were going to sit in front of City Hall?
No, I'm not going to sit in
For
front
yourself?
of you. I sit down there on the walking trail.
Yeah, I think, you know, as there are some limitations that certainly county staff would have to follow in terms of physical distancing, but I think if that's something that
well, that's the idea, is distancing, being apart, so you don't all line up in one place at one time. Everybody's in a line.
So you're physically sharing some of this information in a park?
Yes.
On the walking path? Okay,
yes.
Got it. If we're, you know, one of the main instruments in this piece is this online platform, and we've focused a lot on making something really robust so that it can be shareable and easy to pass along to folks. So I'm also curious in some online options, but thank you for that, Todd. And Catherine, you're raising your hand. Go for it.
Why don't, I see Nancy wrote a question in the chat about will there be postcard mailing? And maybe Amber could take a little bit of time to say what we are doing, and then we can move back to how we can supplement that with the task force ideas.
Thanks, Catherine.
Sure. Okay, so let's see. We spent a good portion of today kind of getting the project landing page in good shape, so that come Monday morning we have a nice space to advertise these open houses. So that's kind of where we'll be driving everyone through all of this outreach, as I think Jennifer mentioned earlier. So some of the different platforms that we're using, yes, we will be sending out a postcard that'll be going to, I believe it's all Gladstone residents. Is that right, Catherine?
It's all of the Gladstone Library District area.
Thank you for clarifying that, yes. And then I believe we're going to be printing extras to just have on hand to pass out at different places as needed, as we discuss here. We are putting a blurb about this in the county-wide monthly newsletter. We're sending out a general press release that goes to all of our media contacts. And hopefully, we'll get picked up in some of the local news. We're also sending a email to our interested parties list. That's the one that we use to promote these meetings. So we'll be tacking on some promotional information about the open house into that. And then we're also doing some pretty robust social media. So we're going to be paying to boost some Facebook posts, doing some paid ads that are targeted to the Gladstone area that will run throughout the duration of the survey. We're also getting access, I've been working on this too, getting access to some of the community Facebook groups. I think there's like the Gladstone Chit Chat group, and maybe there's a couple others that I'm working on so that I can get in there and then put the information in there as well. And then also we use Nextdoor countywide, so we'll be doing some targeted messaging on that as well. And I think that's everything.
Amber, Christy had a question on how does someone get on the email list?
Oh, well, if you go to the project landing page, which is clackamas.us/community-project, there is a button that says newsletter, and you can click that and then just put in your information, and it'll automatically add you to that email list.
Great, thank you, Amber.
Cool. Yep.
Any other questions from folks on kind of that piece? Yeah, Margaret.
How about the people that don't have, how are we going to contact people that do not have home internet access? And they usually go to the library and use it, which is not, but I think that's an important piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are going to need some signage in certain places.
Yeah, there is going to be some in the last, Catherine, I think, is this a good time to reference some of, okay. So in the last round of outreach, some of the things, there was a real effort to make sure that some of the folks who are kind of historically underrepresented in processes like this, people who don't speak English as their first language, people with lower incomes, young people, people experiencing disabilities, that we kind of are intentional about our outreach to them. So this time round, we're working with the with school-based drop-offs. So schools that are coordinating meals for children and their families, and getting some of those postcards and some of that information into their hands through putting it into bags or things like that. We're still coordinating with them to see. We're also talking and connecting with local food pantries, which we had success with in the first round, and seeing what our options are there. We held a great conversation with a Spanish-speaking parent group within the North Clackamas School District, and we're going to see how we can connect with them again. I'll post some interesting challenges because we can't connect with people in person, and schools are also out for the session, but we do have those phone numbers, and so we're going to be trying to connect with those folks. And then we also had quite a bit of luck with the Gladstone High School journalism students, so trying to connect with some of those students over the summer. But it looks like in the chat, folks are also chiming in with some places that signage can be posted. I mean, this is one of the real limitations of this time that we're in. I'm gonna be very frank in that it poses, if we can't get folks into a room together and they don't have internet access, it's very, very challenging for us to call, we can't really call them individually and explain the design alternatives to them. What we can do though, is if you know some of these people, or if they are your neighbors or people that they come in contact with, that you're coming in contact with, maybe you can help them take the survey. That is putting a little bit more of the burden, but maybe if you know that there's someone who really cares about this, but they don't have home internet access, but you do you talk when you're taking a walk down the road, or they're your neighbor. Maybe you can help them and kind of walk through this with them. If you have creative ideas on whether people would be able to get in touch for a Zoom meeting or something, we'd love to hear them. But the reality is it's hard to do outreach sometimes with folks when we're limited with some of the tools we can use. I've never experienced anything like this, and some of the challenges that we're facing are really real. So I'd love to hear some thoughts and feedback from people, but also encourage you, if you do know some of these people, maybe there are ways that you can help them if you have a smartphone or have internet. Christy, I see your hand, but I also want to be sure if there's anybody else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet, if you wanted to chime in. We still have plenty of time in our meeting. Not seeing any initial hands, so Christy. Oh, Lisa and then Christy.
I just had a question about the printed copies. So if we wanted to drop some off at the post office or the laundromat or some of the places that people suggested, where do we get the paper copy?
The paper copy of the postcard? Is that what you're saying?
No, of the survey.
Right now, we don't have plans to do a paper copy of the survey.
So you're talking about dropping off the postcards only at these places.
Yeah. And that's one of the difficulties, is that, the postcard drives you to an online, an online site, which you need a computer to have. One of the reasons we didn't want to do the hard copy is that there weren't that many places to leave them. And then the other part was it's not really a standalone document. You really need to have a fair amount of background to be able to understand what's happening. So we only used the hard copy surveys last time when we were in person with our focus groups, was the main way that worked. So that's all I can say right now, unless you have some other thoughts about it.
And last time, I believe, Catherine, when we did drop some of those surveys off at some key locations, we didn't get them back. We left some, I think, at the senior center. We left some at some other locations. And if we weren't going there to hold an in-person meeting with people, even when we went to go check back in with them and collect those surveys, it was, I think we got maybe 2. Which again, 2 is better than nothing, but for this, we'd anticipate really probably having to print something similar to the packets that you received to be able to show and print the detailed drawings. It's a lot of information in this round. It feels and looks a little different than some of the other rounds. So, kind of weighing, like, is it worth it to try and do something like that? That's pretty resource intensive to put out if we've had really low returns on those when we did this in the past, or with this in the first round of outreach.
So Amber did talk about being able to hand out postcards. So I did call the senior center today, and they have, people are coming in to pay their utility bills. And so they were more than happy to take postcards there. But again, it's driving you to a website. I also called the Children and Family Services Center, and I think we're going to be able to put some there. And then, of course, we're going to put some at the library as well, because the libraries are doing pickups. So those are the 3 main spots where we would have postcards for people to get a little more information and send them to the website.
How about the Civic Center?
Oh, yeah, of course we could do that.
I'm kind of wondering if we shouldn't partner with the city and see if in the next, for the water sewer bills, if we can't have something in there with the state, with the bills.
Well, the postcards are going to every household.
Okay.
So I think we've got the households covered. I think the part that is difficult and challenged is for people that don't have access to a computer or don't speak English very well.
Are there postcards being made available in other languages?
Do you want to answer that, Allison? So the postcard does have just one sentence which will take them to the website. The website will have one FAQ flyer that's fully translated. But we didn't feel like it was probably worth it to translate the entire open house. And because it's kind of a can of worms, we have like these videos that are not, you know, we would need to have those translated, or, you know, captions. We have other documents we're linking to. And so we don't have that right now. We just didn't feel like it was, based on how many Spanish people, Spanish speaking people came to the website last time, it was very, very low. One thing that Amber is, I know you had a discussion about today. Amber, you want to talk about just the language options?
So the county website is set up with Google Translate so that people, non-English speaking people, can choose their preferred language, which I think historically has been kind of iffy. But I had a conversation with one of my colleagues today who is multilingual, and she had told me that in her opinion, the feature works really well with Spanish compared to other languages, just because it's more frequently used, and just the languages that are used more often tend to just start performing better with that feature. So the idea is that we can drive people to the website, they can set their preferred language and navigate the page enough to get the information they need, and then see clearly that there's contact information too. So if they have comments they want to provide or ask questions, they can easily do that. And then from there, we can get an interpreter to work with them more. That's kind of the idea.
Can I add one point in the last round of outreach, we had, especially with the Latino community, we had really good feedback in the meeting, and we got some relationships started that we would be pursuing again with the people that we originally started. And a lot of times in underrepresented groups, the key is really to start to develop partnerships with certain people in the community who can then spread the word to other people in the community, rather than going through more traditional means of websites and postings and that sort of thing. So we definitely in this next round are going to be reaching back out to those people we established relationships with in the beginning. And they had noted in that meeting that they would spread the word to people they knew. So we'll definitely be following back up on that as well. And that's where we get really good input, and hope to grow that a little bit more. So.
Christy, Mitzi, I think you might want to respond directly to that, and then I want to get Christy's comments and questions.
Well, I actually wanted to talk more about it. If you know someone who cannot fill out the survey because they don't have Wi-Fi access or a computer, please have them call the library. We're not quite ready for this yet, but we just received 10 laptops today. They're refurbished. We bought them from a nonprofit organization, TechSoup. We're not quite ready to make them available to the public, but I believe that on a one-by-one basis, we could set up an appointment. They cannot come inside the building, but we could set up an appointment and have a laptop available for them to use outside of the building to complete the survey.
Nice.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mitzi.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Mitzi.
Christy, go right ahead.
No, it was just a really quick comment to Amber, because I know you've worked with a food pantry, Gladstone Food Pantry. In recent months, we've had a change in leadership. So if you need new contact information, just let me know.
That's great. Thank you, Christy. Other comments from folks? Questions? So we have about half an hour left in our meeting, but I'm curious if, once this link is, we've gotten some great feedback from folks on places to leave postcards, and some new information from Mitzi. which is totally awesome and kind of blowing my mind that this is where we are in the world, but that's great so that there's computers that can be available for people. And I do want to recognize that this is challenging, you know, and it really will need a lot of effort from folks kind of coming together to get the word out, to help people if they need help taking this. We can certainly support that, and we're trying to really focus our efforts on reaching out to folks who, you know, traditionally don't even know sometimes that these things are going on, and as Jennifer said, build on those relationships that we started in round one. But are there groups, people, are you part of a book club that you're going to say, yes, I can send this information out to people? Beverly is giving a thumbs up. I wonder if I can just kind of go around and get some thoughts from people on some of the groups, so we can also have a fuller picture of who this is going out to and where there might be gaps that we need to be proactive about getting the word out to get folks excited about this. You know, this is a really, really exciting time in the process. And this is when the library kind of starts to take shape and come to life. So I'm curious, Beverly, you gave me an immediate thumbs up. Who are your people? Who are you going to talk about this with?
Well, I coordinate the book club at the Gladstone Library, and we meet once a month, and I will definitely bring it up to that group. And then, of course, Lanny and I will both make sure that all the foundation members are aware of the survey. And then I'm going to check with neighbors that I know, and we'll try and reach out to a few of the neighbors that I've not met yet.
Cool.
And,
that's great. So book club, we've got the foundation between you and Lanny, and everybody in the immediate vicinity of Beverly's house is going to know about this too. She's going to be letting them know. Christy asked, how long will it be open? Until August 2nd. So from July 6th to August 2nd, so nearly a full month. And then we'll be bringing the results of this back to you towards the middle of or end of August. Catherine will talk about that in a minute. So July, the entire month of July, it'll be open.
Okay. There were a lot of chats that brought up places that I was going to mention, like making sure that you get on Nextdoor Gladstone, not just Nextdoor County. And the Gladstone City Live newsletter. Those were things that she talked about, the county newsletter, but you need to do the city newsletter.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we did get it in the city newsletter. Mitzi let me know about that.
Okay,
So
good.
Mitzi did it. Thank you, Mitzi.
And one quick point about Nextdoor, it is actually set up differently than other social media platforms, so that we actually don't have access to see any other agency or neighborhood pages. So we can't just go post in, you know, the Gladstone agency page. We can target to that neighborhood, but we can't, if it's like going on their page, that's something that we just can't do.
Okay, Nancy and Lisa both raised their hands when Nextdoor came up. So Nancy, over to you.
Yeah, I can post on Nextdoor to Gladstone. Lisa probably can too.
Cool. It's
Well,
going to be
thank
on
you.
Nextdoor Gladstone.
Thanks.
Vile place.
It is. I'm Nextdoor Selwood Westmoreland. Woo, it's wild. All kinds of crazy stuff going on in this neighborhood, coyotes and stuff. Other groups from folks or kind of people that you know of that you can connect with or that you're keeping in touch with, even during social distancing.
Can I ask, sorry.
Oh, Lanny and then Jennifer.
Okay, well, I can contact the Gladstone Rotary and let them know. And Nancy Eichstad and Lorraine and I can certainly get our neighborhood. We will be glad to drive those people crazy. We will get those people.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Cool. Jennifer, go ahead.
I know that somebody, Jackie noted postcards at the City Hall, and then Nancy noted postcards and books on hold. Are you able to put something like that in the books in hold, Mitzi?
We plan to make the postcards available at the holds table. So if someone is interested when they're picking up their holds, they can take a postcard. We would need quite a few postcards if we were to put them in every book. We'll make them available.
Cool. Thanks, Mitzi. Other folks? Yeah, Leslie.
Mute. I have a friend who lives in the unincorporated portion of the Gladstone service area, and she lives in a house that's part of a that has a homeowners association that's still active. I was going to send the link to her and ask her to send it to all of her neighbors in the homeowners association because they have a distribution list. So
Cool.
even though she doesn't necessarily know these people well, she has access to names and could just send an email. I don't know, a lot of homeowners associations are no longer active, but if you know of any in the Gladstone area and could contact one person there, it's a way to get to others.
Cool. That's great. And they'll be joining Deborah in North Clackamas, right? Unincorporated Gladstone service area.
I want to say something about Deborah's comment.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, who live in the Oak Grove, north or south, they think they live in Milwaukee because you can't use Oak Grove in something like Zillow. Your house, if you're trying to sell it and it's in Oak Grove, it comes out as Milwaukee. And if you look at businesses in the Oak Grove area of McLaughlin Boulevard, there's Milwaukee this or Milwaukee that, Milwaukee flooring. It's kind of an aggravation to people who are wanting to have Oak Grove or Oak Lodge, and that's kind of confusing too. We have the Oak Lodge Library, but it's in Oak Grove.
Incorporate.
And same is true for what used to be the sanitary district. I don't know, it's now water services, but so I don't think that I don't relate to being in North Clackamas. I think that's maybe, we're in the North Clackamas School District, but that's a much larger designation of territory. So it's a difficult thing to live here and know what your neighbors think about your neighborhood or what they even call it. So you could see that two of us live in this unincorporated area and we don't call it the same thing.
Right. It's just difficult. I think that North Clackamas should be included in that, because if I saw that, even though I have a Milwaukee mailing address, I don't think I live in I don't live in Milwaukee. And if I had a child in high school, they would be in the North Clackamas School District.
Yes.
So it's just confusing and hard to pin down. And I think I agree with Leslie. A lot of people in the unincorporated service area don't have a clue where they live. They just don't know what to call it. And a lot of them don't know that they are in the Gladstone service area, because we've talked to a number of our neighbors about that, and they find it a surprise that they're in the Gladstone service area. So maybe on the postcard, there ought to be something that simply says, you are in the service area for the new Gladstone Library. We would like your opinion about, go to this and fill out the survey.
So
otherwise, they're liable to not think that it applies to them.
I might make a quick suggestion, or just maybe clarify a couple of things and share a little bit of perspective from a lot of public surveys. There is a question that one of the only requirements on the next steps page is, again, that first name and a zip code. So we are collecting zip codes, and that's really the only requirement. The rest is all optional. And what I'm hearing is that really maybe the most important thing is giving people a lot of options to self-identify. So people, if they identify with North Clackamas, they can click North Clackamas. If they, like Leslie says, I don't think that they're in Milwaukee, they could click Milwaukee, and that's more of a self-identification. One of the things with this too is that you know, you may have come across, I know I certainly have seen surveys that we've put together and end up on my social media accounts. And, you know, somebody's promoting, I used to live in Salem, like the Salem streetscapes design. And even though I don't live in Salem anymore, I absolutely could take that survey. And we don't really have, you know, just if somebody puts in a zip code that's outside of this area, that's kind of the Gladstone Library Service area, it doesn't mean that their results are discounted. You know, anybody could take the survey. And we want to be able to show where people are coming from. So we can go back and look and say, well, this person that hated, you know, this option, this option, this option, it's attached to this zip code. And we know that that's actually a Portland area zip code. So they're probably not using the Gladstone Library a whole lot, or they're not a resident. But just so you know, it is truly public in the sense that anybody could take it. So that's why we do collect the zip codes so that we can have a little bit more discernment. But that being said, I think that's another reason why it's really important for you to kind of get this out, get the word out to your neighbors. And thank you, Lanny and Beverly, for already promising to bug your neighbors about it, so that we can get kind of a more accurate representation of what people who are in Gladstone, you know, get as many Gladstone people and unincorporated Gladstone service area folks to take this survey so that we can have a more accurate representation. But of course, certainly, if you all wanted to weigh in on the Concord property survey, take it. Definitely. We'll just know that the zip code and, you know, if you put your full name, we'll know it's you, is coming from a different place. But it is, and it might be outside that service area, and it might be something for the task force, and in your case, you all to consider when you review those results. But it is truly public and open. So know that we're collecting the zip codes. I'm hearing make sure people have a lot of ways to self-identify what neighborhood they live in, and we can take that into consideration when we're looking at the results. And thirdly, tell your neighbors so that they can take it and you get a good representation from Gladstone folks. Yeah, Beverly.
Well, while we were talking about this, I was thinking about something that Lanny and I can maybe see that Katie does. We have a list of people who have donated to the foundation over the years. We also have a list of volunteers who come and work at our book sale each year. And I would think that those would be good groups that we could maybe contact.
Cool. That's wonderful. And Lanny's nodded, so she's just been voluntold into that process as well. Great.
I have an idea, and I don't know if it's feasible.
Go for it. Let's dream big.
I know that often with our schools in the city of Gladstone, they have email lists to all the families in the homes. I wonder if they'd be willing to send out something with their massive list to all the students. And that would be for the high school, elementary school, and the Children's Family Center as well.
EGOTS.
What?
Well, I don't know.
I
just keep thinking there's only two things I've been thinking of while you've been talking about this survey thing. The first one is Bodie McBoatface.
Would you care to, I know what you're talking about. Would you care to elaborate a little bit more?
Doesn't everybody know what Bodie McBoatface is?
Nope. I see a couple of shaking heads. So you're referring to when
it's too long a story. It's too long a story to tell. You'll have to Google it. But
I get your point, Todd. Yeah.
We keep coming up with more ways to contact power users.
Oh, like
you know,
electrical
and
power.
The what?
Like electricity, that kind of power users?
No, like the book club. Like all our best friends, like, you know, everybody we know that uses the library every other day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this morning as I walked by the library, there was a guy, you know, out there with his long cord stretched between the barbecue joint across from the library where they have a power outlet, trying to get close enough to the library to use the internet.
Mm.
You know, and I don't know how we can, is Billy on this list? How are we going to reach her?
Will there be a link on the LINCC website to take the survey too?
You could certainly set that up.
Because I mean, that's where I go to place holds and see, you know, renew checkouts and things like that. So
That's a good
that
idea.
would specifically target our base, you know, of users.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, we are kind of getting into the end portion of our meeting. So maybe if it's okay with Lisa, we'll kind of wind up this conversation piece. And if you do, I mean, be thinking about ways that you can, neighbors you can bug, other creative ideas on where to share this link, groups that you're a part of, family members, get them involved. But yes, Todd's point on Bodie McBoatface, well, I'll take him. You'll put it out to the public, you'll get the feedback, that's for sure. We don't have anyone currently observing our meeting. So I think that means, Lisa, that we are not going to have any public comment this evening. If somebody does pop in there, I'll keep an eye out. But I think, Lisa, I'm going to just turn it back over to you.
Is there anybody here that didn't have an opportunity to share your ideas? I know some of you didn't speak at all. So I just want to be sure that everybody has an opportunity. Nancy?
I know I put it on the chat, but can information be placed on the old City Hall? I mean, there are so many people who walk by that corner, and if there is one of those little scan codes for a phone, or go to this website, or post the 3 designs and tell people, you know, weigh in, something that catches their attention, and it also identifies that location as the library is going to be here.
The home of the new library.
Home of the new library. Here it is. Vote for it. You know, do something like that. The other one is, if we have a group that we go to and we wanted to get a handful of postcards, is there a place we can do that? Or can we just ask to have some mailed? Because like my Tai Chi class, we meet in a park and there's like 12 to 15 of us, and we're either Gladstone or Oak Lodge. So I'd be glad to do that. But if I had some, I would just wander around with them.
I'm going to ask this question to Mitzi. So Mitzi, could people pick up, you know, a stack from the library? Like, could Nancy come and pick up 15 cards from the library?
Sure. Most likely you would take from the stack that would be on the holds table. Okay. And at this time, we're offering holds Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at Gladstone, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday at Oak Lodge.
Okay.
So we'll make it a robust pile, so then Mitzi can refill it.
Okay. But I really would like to see something on the side of the building, of that ugly old building, something that, you know, announces, yes, this is the new library and this is what we can do about it, kind of a thing. I think that would help some people on Nextdoor, not all of them, but.
Does the county have a graphics design team that could make a poster to hang on the building or something like that?
We hadn't planned, you know, right now the biggest thing we have is the postcard. So I hear what you're saying, Nancy. It probably doesn't fulfill your entire desire to announce that that's where the library is going to be. But I think it's a really good idea for us to be thinking about a banner that we might put up on the building. We wouldn't be able to do it next week for sure, but we can certainly take a look at doing that.
Yeah, and as long as it was linked to the website, that would provide something.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna have something smaller to link them to the website, something that a pedestrian could see. I think we could also be thinking about a larger banner. So in general, people will know this is the location. We haven't been calling it the Gladstone City Hall anymore. We're calling it 525 Portland Avenue. So people know that.
Okay.
Good idea.
Jackie, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that last weekend I had to go spend some time at that building, and I can't wait for it to come down. But I do agree we would support working with the county to get coming soon Gladstone Library, something out there that advertises that's where the new library is going.
Oh.
Cool. Great idea, Nancy.
Is there anybody else that didn't have a chance? May, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Anybody else that didn't have a chance to say something that had a thought or?
Well, I have one thought for Jackie. What about the cleanup around the city hall and the library? Are we going to, it's a city crew on that? Or is that just because of COVID?
Are you talking about landscaping and weeds?
Yeah.
Public Works will take care of the old City Hall site and the county takes care of the library site.
We're working on that right now.
Okay, I guess if there's no public comment and there's no other people that have comments they wanted to make, Catherine could talk about next steps.
Okay, let's see if I can share my screen successfully. So there are two things that I wanted to show you tonight, just to let you, can you see that? It's the,
yes.
Good.
Yes.
So this is something that we haven't been using very much because it's probably really small if you're on an iPad or a laptop. So we haven't brought it back, but I thought it was worth just kind of a reminder of where we are in the process overall. And amazingly, we're not quite on schedule, but almost. I think it's fair enough to say we're on schedule and also tracking very closely with Concord, which I think is almost amazing. So where we were, these are the steps. This was project startup in the dark blue. Light blue was technical investigation that OPSIS did. And then we did the programming to figure out the types of rooms that would be and the uses that would be in the library. All of these had community engagement components. And then we are right here. So we're at the second to the end here. So we're homing in on the end of the project, light at the end of the tunnel for the master plan. So we are almost done with phase 3, which is called our alternatives analysis, which we put a long time ago, February to July 2020. So we're not far off. And then the final phase is when the preferred alternative is selected, recommended by the task force, then it will be refined before it goes to the Board of County Commissioners. So I just wanted to remind you that before I show you my usual, where is that? There it is. My usual schedule here that's on the agenda. So, so there in the next, so I want to note that we have 4 task force meetings to the end of the master plan, assuming no unforeseen happenings. Earlier, I think it was yesterday, I mentioned it was 3. I was mistaken with 4. So I'm going to outline those here to the best I know them. So the next task force meeting, we're going out for public outreach. So that's here, July 6th to August 2nd. And then I'll come back to the board in a minute. And then we have a date which is set for the August 19th for a review of public input. So what this does is after this, the 2nd of August, it gives Allison and Jennifer and her crew time to review and analyze all of the surveys and comments that have been received, and then they will come back on the 19th to review it with you. And then in September, and we're homing in on a date, but I don't want to say anything yet because I need to confirm it, but early September, we would like to meet for you to make a final recommendation on your preferred alternative. I'm hoping it's the first or second week in September. Then that with that direction, the design team will go away and refine it and make a final report and refine some of the drawings, and also based on some of the feedback that they've heard and learned over the last month or two. And then in October, we will make, you will make a recommendation to the board to accept the preferred alternative. The goal here in October, end of October probably, is that we will take the Concord project and the Gladstone project together to the board with recommendations. So I think we're tracking really well to do that. Just going back a bit on the board, we are scheduled for a board policy session on July 14th, so we can talk about all of the work that we've done to date, status update. We'd really love it if maybe others would come. I don't quite know yet how, there probably isn't time to speak, maybe time for one of our chair or vice chair to speak. I will confirm that. And then, so that's on the 14th. And then we have a couple other board presentations planned. One with would probably have a vote with the board. So there's a total of 3 times we're anticipating interacting with the board.
Will we get links if we want to attend those board meetings?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Good idea.
That would be great. Thank you. So this is it for July for the task force. And then we meet in August on the 19th. Okay.
Yep.
Unless we go to one of the Zoom board meetings. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Annie? At some point before this goes to the board, are we going to see some designs for the outside of the building that are different than what we had seen before?
I don't think so. Most of that, so we're in the master planning phase, and then you remember Jennifer talked about all those design phases in the future.
Right.
Those will be done after the master planning phase. They'll be done in schematic design. So Jennifer, I see you're nodding your head and you agree. Yeah.
So we will say we approve of design number 3 or whatever, but we won't know what the outside is going to look like. Is that correct?
Correct. But the public engagement won't be over at the end of master planning. So we'll come up with a plan of how to stay engaged with all of you and as some of those critical decisions are made. Because
that was pretty big on our list of things we wanted changed.
Yeah. Yeah. We heard
okay.
It. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just add that those are all decisions that will be made through the design process once we really step into that with you. So at this level, it really is about form and massing, not literal materials yet. So it was really good to hear all that feedback from you all because that sets us on the right step as we move into those phases. But yeah, we'll try to think about how we can put that out there so people do understand that too.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So will this committee continue on through the additional phases later in the year or next year, or is our task completed this fall?
Well, a big part of your task is completed. We don't have a specific plan. We know that we'll stay engaged. I know that we talked a lot about art, for example. So this may be the group where we talk about art. We will also, of course, want to have you make probably a recommendation on schematic design would make sense. And then after that, it would be through sort of more intermittent. But I'm anticipating through schematic design, we will be engaged with you. Oh, that's Natalie.
No, it's not me. It's Christy.
Oh, it's Christy. Yeah. Sorry, Natalie.
That's okay.
Did that answer your question? We will come back with a proposal to you and see what works. Yeah.
Okay, so does anybody else have any questions of Catherine or Jennifer or Allison that you wanted to ask before we close our meeting? Okay, sounds like we've had our questions answered. Until next time, until August 19th. Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. Oops, so what, Beverly, I saw you.
She's waving.
Oh, you're just waving. Okay.
Just waving goodbye.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.